Hello, David Allen here. This presentation is part of my culinary art study at the University of Alaska. While I'm new to culinary arts and the food industry, I've been a lifelong foodie and a avocational cook at home, making meals. In my travels, I've taken lots of cooking classes. I've come to really like cast iron. I use cast iron pretty much every day. I have a large collection of skillets. I also have a large collection of enameled castware that I use routinely in my cooking. We'll get a chance to talk about the history of cast iron, its care, its kitchen use, and to share some recipes. So what is cast iron? Well, cast iron is made from blocks of iron and steel. They're molten, mixed together, and provided with carbon to float out the impurities. That molten metal is poured into a sand cast mold. When everything cools, the mold is break away, and then we have a brand new cast iron skillet or pot to use. Let's look at the history of cast iron. Hindu scriptures back to 1100 BC reveal they used wrought iron cookware. The Chinese records back to 212 AD indicate cast iron pottery use. English use from 1680s are recorded. And in fact, Adam Smith said cast iron pottery in everyday use is more valuable than gold. The Dutch oven, often made with legs, was patented in 1708. In the Americas, prior to European colonists, there's some usage of cast materials, but primarily the Europeans brought the casting methods to the Americas. By about 1860, there were several foundries, including Griswold, established, and cast iron pots were well on their way to use. Now remember, in those days, most of the cooking was done on the hearth, with either the pot in the hearth or suspended above the flames. And the cast iron was ideal for this use. Later, as kitchen stoves were developed, and they too were made from cast iron, the pots evolved to fit onto the stoves. And by about 1890, the cast iron skillet was made. In the first part of the 20th century, cast iron cookware in America was very popular. Every home had at least one pot. It was durable and cheap and affordable. In the 1920s, enameled coated cookware was developed, where the cast iron was coated with a vitreous glaze, and it too grew into popular use. However, by about 1960, with the modern methods of steel and non-stick coatings, cast iron kind of fell out of favor for more modern skillets and modern cookware and modern looking, probably to go along with the modern stoves and the modern kitchen. So that brings us up to 2020. Many of the old-time cast iron companies are out of business. They closed their doors as demand fell off, or they were bought by other companies. They quit making enameled cast iron in America, and they became the venue of European manufacturers at a high expense. And a lot of the production moved to China. But the resurgence has come about because many reasons. One is people had an aversion to coatings like Teflon at high heat. And two, amazingly, those old pots and pans survived from 75 years ago, and they're still in use with many homemakers. So there's been such a surge of demand for these old-time cast iron cookery that the pre-1960s manufacturers are in very high demand. They bring tremendous prices on eBay, and people are continually looking for garage sales and at thrift stores for those hidden treasures of the Griswolds and the Wopaks. Okay, what about using cast iron? Well, cast iron does not distribute heat evenly. You can prove that with your infrared thermometer. If you put it on a burner, the temperatures will range widely across the surface of the skillet. If you really want to have an illustration, put some just raw flour in there evenly on high heat, and you'll see the center of the heat brown where the outer edges remain uncooked. Cast iron has a higher heat capacity than equal masses of copper, so it'll require more energy to bring it up to an equal temperature at the same mass as copper. Well, that's an advantage because it also retains the heat longer, and it'll cool down much slower than copper will. So cast iron is slow to cool down and is a good heat regulator. It's not subject to temperature spikes. So putting that all to use means that you need to heat the iron slowly on a medium to low flame. If you want to bring it up to higher temperatures evenly, put it in the oven. Also need to make sure the burner is the correct size for the bottom of the pan. A small burner centered will only heat the center and keep the outside edges cool. Well, that concludes the history and some of the properties of cast iron. Now I'd like to move on to what you need to use the skillets, prepare them for use, take care of them, safety, and move on to some recipes when we're done with those items. Thank you.